Why do two people dance tango? Because it takes two. It's not enough to find the right partner. You have to be the right partner yourself. There's always another side to openness, honesty, and sincerity in relationships. When one person becomes insincere or dishonest, the other becomes extremely vulnerable and starts to break down. That's why it's so important to move forward, to stay interested, to keep evolving. The problem is this: we live relying on the past while creating the illusion of the present. That's the worst thing possible, because we should be living in the present, grounded in what is right now, laying the foundation for what can unfold from this moment. For example, in an honest conversation, a husband admits to his wife that when he was in first grade, he used to pick his nose, and for her, that's unacceptable. She says, "If I'd known that, I would have divorced you." But the thing is, she fell in love with the man he is now, with that exact set of traits.
It was that nose-picking that made him who he is.
And when we start having questions, complaints, and conflicts because we've learned something new about someone, we end up blocking both their and our own future growth. True honesty begins when you can say, "I know this person by how they feel to me, how good I feel with them, and what we can do together to keep moving forward." People open up only as much as they're ready to become wealthy, successful, loving, youthful, and evolving. But there's a downside: vulnerability. That's why you don't cast pearls before swine, or give what's sacred to dogs. So every time you say something, feel whether it falls into fertile soil or not. Because if you're planting on asphalt or concrete, nothing will grow. The degree to which a man or woman is open, the richness of that soil, determines how much we can speak, how much we can sow. Because if you dump everything you have out at once, but the plot of fertile soil is small, and the rest lands on the asphalt of resentment, hurt, fear, and tension, it'll come back to you hard. We should only give as much as a person is ready to receive. It's that same dynamic when someone thinks, "I'm just going to sit down and tell my wife everything about my past, what I did, how I behaved." But if she doesn't yet have the level of acceptance, if she can't yet meet smoking, drinking, or manipulation with understanding, and he unloads the full spectrum, her capacity overflows and rejection kicks in. That's why our task is, as they say, to leave the table a little hungry. Because if we spill everything out but aren't ready to change or to accept that this was us, it can really backfire. And in the end, it depends on both people. If you're together, it's only because you match each other. And since there's no such thing as missed upside, if something happened, it happened exactly as it was meant to. It makes no sense to think, if only I'd done this or that, things would have been different, or he could have acted another way, but he didn't. Right now, most outcomes get decided by whichever side, the positive or the negative, has more votes in the laws. And since we mostly live in categorical thinking, those categories unite and block our ability to be successful. So even when we have something important going for us, we often follow our negative patterns instead. And sometimes, waving our sword around, we suddenly stop and ask, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Because it's not love driving us, it's belief. Belief wants you to stay in the same things you haven't lived through yet, but no matter how long you live, you'll never outlive false values. So now we're going to dive into a tricky subject, because on one hand, honesty, sincerity, openness, but on the other, that has to happen gradually, smoothly, naturally, while feeling the other person and yourself. The more we're ready to lose, accept, die, or live, the more we can share. Because if you decide, I'm just going to tell everyone everything, but you don't have the energy to evolve, you've only cleared space but haven't filled it, it won't work. Sure, you accepted who you were, but now you also have to accept who you're going to be. That's just as important. Like the song says, we'll destroy the whole world, and then what? Nothing. Because you have no idea what to build or how. And if you do, those ideas are false, meaning they lack truth. And when there's no truth, aggression comes in return.
So this typical story, when a man asks, "How many partners have you had?" Does that mean she can just add one every year, opening up gradually? So women shouldn't tell everything right away?
It all depends on how prepared the man is, how open he is, what stage of development he's at, because he falls in love with a woman who carries the kind of energy he needs. And if he's already fallen in love, it means she has exactly the kind of experience with men that he requires in order to fall in love. But if he lives in his head and not in his heart, he'll rely on false values. Because when we dig deeper, it turns out that, unfortunately, most people, in fact, almost everyone, uses different measuring sticks, meaning they judge themselves by one standard and others by a completely different one.
Like, it's okay for me because it's me. But for her or for him, not really.
Exactly. Like, let's say I cut in line or solve something through connections or nepotism, that's fine. But if it's a ruler, a president, or some kind of official, how dare he? That's not acceptable, right? But me, if I use my contacts to speed things up or pay a bit extra, that's okay. But for him, absolutely not. Never. How could he? The point here is, it doesn't matter who someone is. What matters is how I act personally, and that I don't judge others for acting differently than I do, even if they act like me. I shouldn't think it's fine when I do it, but wrong when they do. And here's the key. I act the way I'd ideally want people around me to act, and to act that way toward me too. But if they don't, while I do, I never judge them. I simply offer it to the energy, to the field, to the flow of events, so that maybe they'll reflect it back, and others will try it my way, if it brings love, growth, and abundance. Because not everyone's meant to be an artist, a miner, or an entrepreneur. Not everyone needs dogs at home or flowers on the windowsill. We have no right to impose the same lifestyle on everyone. Unfortunately, that's what our education system does today, measuring everyone by the same standards as if all must be identical. But individuality comes first. If we give children the space to be individuals and approach each one personally, even if that looks more expensive, we create huge potential for the evolution of society.
Let's come back to the topic of man and woman. Should everyone be forced to follow the same values? Do all men and women have to have one single spouse, one husband or one wife? Or can some have 5 or 10 marriages? Do we all have to connect by the same rules?
Look,
Because I once read a comment under a video clip where you said that wholeness is about the relationship between a man and a woman. The comment was, "What does the opposite sex have to do with it if I'm already whole with the world? What do men have to do with that?" Maybe that's also possible. Maybe there's another way to become whole
the question here is,
or self-sufficient.
to figure yourself out, why do we attract, as it seems to us, disconnected jerks? That's supposedly us. But jerks, because we lie to ourselves, pretend, don't want to do inner work, and insist that our problems are tiny flies, while others' problems are giant elephants, when in reality, they're the same. We just look at our own through the wrong end of the binoculars, and they seem small and insignificant, while other people's look like total disasters.
By problems, you mean flaws?
Yes, that's what we're talking about now. Like, I'm overweight, I smoke, I consume too much of what's unhealthy, I swear I don't grow. That's fine. But he shouldn't smoke, shouldn't drink, should love me, be fit, have abs, be super smart and rich. That's the moment when our demands on society are higher than our demands on ourselves. Our expectations of the government or the tax system or the law are higher than what we expect of ourselves. It's okay when I do whatever I want, but they have to act differently. When does that happen? When a person is in infantile and refuses to take responsibility. The more we acknowledge our strengths and weaknesses, our virtues and flaws, our achievements and mistakes, and see them as part of a natural growth process, working on them sincerely, the more we allow others to have their own paths. We wish them well, but let them choose whether to grow or not. That gives us the ability to move toward what truly feels better for us, the right environment, people, and situations. What does that give in return? It allows us to avoid low-frequency lessons. We don't have to create situations where our subconscious forces us to face our flaws through others, showing us what we still need to work on just because we were lying to ourselves. That's why honesty always comes first for us.
You once said that when a woman learns to think about a man, not from the place of an ideal, but from the place of how she'd like him to be, that's actually the path to making any wish come true.
Yes, but the most important thing is not to get fixated on it, to stay in agreement and acceptance that things will unfold as they should. Like in that well-known saying, do what you must and let it be what it will. It's about doing everything with love and pleasure, the way you'd want others to do for you. And the money will come exactly to the extent that you've put in your energy, and to the degree it's truly valuable for society, because most people want a lot of money without doing anything. They live in the state of a victim and a consumer, and many slip into that victim state. How can you tell if someone is there? They judge, they're categorical, constantly dissatisfied, notice only the bad, and think in negatives. That's a victim mindset. And of course it comes with resentment and aggression. And we can only get out of that state when we admit our resentment, our aggression, our judgment and claims, when we accept our imperfection and decide to change without regret, guilt, or self-destructive thoughts like, I can't write poetry, so I might as well end it all. You simply move toward where you want to be. You agree that it may unfold however it unfolds, but without forcing your opinion on others. Because giving unsolicited advice is like cursing yourself if, God forbid, the people you advised don't follow it. But if your intuition is strong and you give advice to someone who does follow it, you gain big bonuses. It's like investing in stocks. If it goes up, you multiply.
Let's look at this again in the context of man and woman. We've been talking about multiplication, about activating wholeness in a couple. And you mentioned that when a man and a woman are balanced in energy, kind, and sincere with each other, sharing high human values, then their relationship opens a creative potential so powerful they can literally create new worlds together. In that kind of union, the man can clearly visualize the goal. He becomes the one who defines direction, imagining it already happening in the present moment. And the woman visualizes the process, the way they get there. So a woman never thinks in terms of results.
Her role is...
And the man agrees with the processes that the woman offers.
Yes, exactly.
Tell me how that works.
What is feeling? What is state? It's energy composed of multiple laws that have become friends, married, and united together. When a woman focuses on the result, she destroys the very energy that allows it all to happen. A man has the right to clearly define what he's going to do.
To declare it, right?
Yes, to declare it. But then he still shifts into the process, staying open to adjustments guided by events and intuition, ready to cancel or completely change his path, his tools, and how he achieves it. The worst thing he can do is make promises or swear that it must happen in a certain way or that it definitely will, because that becomes a kind of curse and limitation. The ways of God are unfathomable. Sometimes we have to lose everything here to gain everything there, because what we had wasn't real or valuable, yet we had to invest in it with faith and lose it so it would stop holding us back. Only then can we move forward without that burden. But the key point in all this is trust in God.
Because otherwise, if a man fully shifts into being a goal setter and plans too many steps ahead, but lacks harmony and those 88% of feminine energy that could guide, balance, direct, and bring it all to life, he can end up completely breaking down and stop expressing himself or striving for anything at all.
The point here is that he can break down, either fall into depression or flip into aggression, like, you bastards didn't give me what I needed, you changed the laws, the economy went into recession, I could have made it, I wanted to, if only things had gone the way I'd planned when everything was on the rise. Then everything would have been great. Why was he living inside information? When a man and a woman interact regularly, it's like a software update, a recalibration by GPS maps of your location relative to which you understand where to move, how much effort to apply, and how fast things will unfold. When there's a break between a man and a woman, they start hanging out on social media, or she's off with her girlfriends, with her mom, or gets completely absorbed in the kids, while he turns to friends, beer, and all the rest. That tactile contact is lost. Honest conversation, sincerity, and the resonance that comes from sharing and discussing things together, all of it disappears. And when that happens, serious discord sets in, because there's simply no longer enough material for manifestation itself to take place. And again, I want to emphasize that nowadays, let's talk about today, not tomorrow yet. We'll get to tomorrow later, meaning 100, 200, 300 years from now. Let's stay with the present. Today, not every man needs formal, civilized relationships with the official paperwork and a stamp. And not every woman needs those official relationships either, where you sign the papers and it's one person forever, until the end of life. As the saying goes, God's ways are mysterious. So listen to your intuition, to your inner feeling, and move forward through resonance into growth.
And how do you tell on these mysterious paths where it's truly right for you, when you're meant to urgently get married and have kids at 20, or maybe at least by 45, and where you just need to pause, gather yourself, and reflect? What kind of feminine energy could I express so that relationships actually start to blossom?
Based on what I've come to understand, I suggest developing the ability to trust yourself. And to trust yourself, you first need to define your coordinates, your core values. If you've determined that humanity, love, kindness, curiosity with growth, and natural balance come first, then from there comes a state of integrity. You think, you act, you speak, you realize, you desire, you fulfill, honesty with yourself, creative thinking, the ability not to exaggerate or minimize, to switch quickly, to feel yourself as a man, without associating your worth with what you've done, achieved, or possess. And in that state, your intuition becomes incredibly powerful. And then you intuitively know, here we're just friends, here we're colleagues, here we have great sex, here it's an amazing trip, here a perfect vacation, here we just did this one project, and then parted ways. We feel it. But when we fall into the state of I must, like we build this business together, I can't leave him even though he's stuck and doesn't want to move anywhere. I'm obligated to stay and stagnate with him. And at the same time, I'm angry and resentful. That's when a self-destruction program kicks in. Because you're holding him back, he's supposed to move on and do something completely different. And you're holding yourself back too, living by false values, properness, tolerance, and fears that run the show. And fear is always about rigidity and the refusal to take responsibility.